Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a long time since I've done one of these. This is my official guide for the new set. Now, in this particular guide, I wanted to cover a lot of different things. First of all, how to even think about building 4 new synergies for new sets, with examples from the current set. Secondly, I wanted to go over the elemental hexes of this set and how you can use those hexes to your advantage in game. Third, I'd like to go over compositions that I did well with in this set. And finally, I'd like to talk about a little extra notes, mainly pertaining to small things like the impact of Lux as well as Mystic in the current set. First of all, let's talk about synergies in a new set. How do you learn what is good and what is bad in a new set? How do you learn how to build compositions? That's the most important part. The best way to learn how to build compositions is look at big synergies, like 4 to 6 unit synergies, both origins and classes, which share other similar origins or classes within each other. Good examples are in the current set, Rangers have 2 Infernos, Berserkers have 2 Glacial, Mages have 2 Oceans, Summoners have 2 Infernos as well. Using that metric, you can look and kind of build a composition with those 2 synergizing. When you have Rangers and you have the 2 Infernal Rangers, you can from that point decide, well, I can easily go 4 Rangers from this point, or I could choose to go 3 or 6 Inferno. You want to use this metric to have kind of an easy building block or an easy foundation to build on top of. And these are the things you want to be looking out for the most as you're looking at the new set. Let's talk about elemental boards in this set. Every single game, there will be a brand new element, one of 4 that will be chosen at the very start of the game. You will know what element it is because on the very first carousel, when you're picking your very first unit, the element will show in the middle of the carousel, so you can tell whether it's Inferno, it's Ocean, it's Mountain, or it's Cloud. Each of these hexes do different things. One hex spawns immediately at the very first round, and another hex spawns after 3-1. And what these hexes do is they give you buffs, whether defensive or offensive buffs for a unit that sits on the hex. This hex buff takes over 1 item slot, so you can't put it on ultra stacked units, but it spawns randomly in any possible hex on your board, and it's for everyone's board in the same hex as well. So why do these hexes matter? Well, each of these hexes not only influence each individual map you play on, but also influence the one particular variable unit that always switches their origin every map. Kiana is an assassin plus a variable champion that switches their element based on what element the map is. And this has direct impact on how you kind of want to build comps or look at compositions while you're playing on these elements. So I'll give you a good rundown. Inferno is really interesting because Inferno and assassins are more playable on this set. And so generally speaking, when you see an Inferno board, not only are you getting 30% more attack speed on the boards, but also you're getting the potential synergy to go assassins and Inferno at the same time. So when you have Diana, who's an Infernal assassin, as well as Kiana, which is also an Infernal assassin, it allows you to go 3 assassins and 3 Inferno really easily. It creates really straightforward, small, simple synergies that are able to be easily built from the early mid game and forward. The Ocean board that we're going to talk about is going to be very strange because I think the Ocean board is one of the weakest boards in the game. A lot of this is based on the fact that the Ocean synergy itself isn't a very primary carry synergy. Usually Ocean is built to supplement another carry threat. Additionally, it's really hard to kind of combine assassins as well as mana regen. Usually assassins don't want elongated fights, and mana regen tends to help over elongated fights. So having the synergy on Kiana doesn't super help either. But generally speaking, the most important thing about this board is the fact that it makes Spear Shojin a lot stronger. The way Spear works is as soon as you hit your maximum mana and you cast a spell, every other auto attack afterwards gives you a large percentage of your overall mana per auto. But it just so happens that you shoot the first ulti immediately based on Shojin plus the active 30 mana on the Hex. What happens is you're able to chain gun a lot more ultis a lot quicker in a team fight, and it becomes a lot more relevant. And so typically speaking, this is what a board that, like, if you want your mages to be able to pop out really quickly with Shojin especially, as well as maybe Seraphs combined with it, this is definitely the board for you. Aside from that, I'd say generally speaking, Ocean board has it's kind of low impact. The Mountain board gives you 30 health per round for whatever unit is on the Mountain Hex, and it stays there the entire game. What you want to do in Mountain Hexes, you want to keep your most important units that you think you'll hold on to for the rest of the game in those hexes, so that even when you're approaching late game, you're getting multiple hundreds of health of value, and you don't have to sell and kind of ruin the buff early. It's something to definitely keep in mind as you're playing Mountain. The other thing you have to keep in mind is the value of Talia on this board is insanely high. The reason is the actual Mountain buff is a 2 unit buff that gives a random unit a 1500 health shield. 1500 health is more than a 2-star unit's worth of health. And so what happens is you can always splash a Mountain buff with a Kiana and a Talia. The third unit that's part of this buff is the Malphite, but the Malphite is a 4-cost unit and you can't really get that consistently until you're around level 6. However, getting a free defensive 1500 health buff allows you to do a lot and allows you to kind of win a ton of fights that you're not supposed to. So on Mountain, definitely prioritizing Talia, and by default maybe 3 mages is okay because you're getting Talia as well. The Cloud Hex is the last hex available and very, very powerful. This hex allows you to do 2 different things. First of all, standing on the hex gives you 20% base dodge. It means essentially that you're just tankier on the hex. It's very, very strong for tank threats, especially like maybe 1 or 2 tank threats, to get the dodge buff and just go crazy at being able to kind of dodge out physical damage approaching. On top of that, the cloud buff itself gives dodge to your entire team. And so getting Kiana plus another unit gives your entire global team 20% dodge, which is really, really powerful. The value of like Blade Masters like Yasuo, who is a Cloud Blade Master, and Mystic like Janna, a Cloud Janna, become more powerful on this board. Additionally, and this is only related to this specific hex, a specific item, Iceborne Gauntlet, is super strong on this hex. Now, what Iceborne does is it gives an AoE attack speed slow if you dodge an enemy attack. But what ends up happening on this board is you're given base dodge, and so that plus Iceborne means that you're able to get a huge defensive kind of barrier for your team comp, to the point where it's incredibly powerful for your team and something I recommend building almost on every cloud board, period. Next up are the compositions that I found success with. 3 mage, 3 summoners. This is the baseline composition, and what this does is mages have dual cast on this set, which means they can have a chance, 50% or 100% chance to cast twice. Well, if you're casting summoned units twice, you're very, very powerful. So being able to put stuff on, let's say Malzahar or Azir or Zyra, and having 2 summon threats or 2 times as many summons allows you to get 2 times as many damage, and it's even an additional tank for you, because a lot of times they have to be able to try to tear through the tanky stats of your summons as well. So 3 mage, 3 summoners are a very good default starting opener, and it depends what summoner you stack for ways that you can upgrade the composition. You can also go 6 summoners or 6 mages from here as well. Both very viable strategies. Another comp I wanted to cover was the idea of going 2 to 4 Shadow. Shadow is a very, very strong archetype, similar to Imperial buff, but it affects all your units at all times. Especially going from 2 to 4 Shadow, it's a humongous buff. You could start with an early Malzahar and then work toward a Kindred, and as soon as you get 2 Shadow, you have a lot of options. From this point, you can either go something like Rangers with Shadow, or you can go 3 or 6 Summoners with Shadow, and eventually transition to 4 Shadow in the end game with Master Yi, as well as picking up something like Janna as well for Mystic. In the 4 Shadow composition, you tend to usually stack Malzahar as well as Master Yi. Those are your 2 powerhouse carries, and Malzahar is just an insanely strong unit. And one last comp before I forget, Blade Masters are very, very strong in this set as well, because Blade Masters are activated with as little as 2 Blade Masters. Really, really easy to just sneak in 2 Blade Masters anywhere in a composition, especially when you have units like Sivir, which is a Blade Master Desert, so you can always sneak in a random other Blade Master and then a random Desert to get Armor Pen as well as Blade Master buff. It's very common as an in-game comp to kind of Blade Master maybe a Nocturne and go for 3 Assassins, or even you can even Blade Master something like a Berserker, like Olaf, to kind of run a more Berserker-oriented composition, or even a Ranger, although that's a little bit more rare. Blade Masters is definitely something you want to be looking out for, and something that's very, very powerful in this set. The last composition I want to talk about is a 3 Assassin composition opener. This is a composition that goes either Steel Assassins stacking Nocturne, or you stack Kha'Zix with Seraphs and IE. Kha'Zix in this composition is the highest costing assassin, which usually means the highest cost champion is usually the strongest champion of that specific synergy. And Kha'Zix is no slouch. So the hardest carrying assassin I've ever seen has been Kha'Zix with double Seraphs and IE, and he just runs train on your entire team. So 3 assassins is pretty standard to start with, and you kind of want to be a little bit more flexible in this set and go as many different things as you possibly can. Finally, let's talk about small things on the set. Mystic and MR in general is more of a tech option than before, whereas the first set had Dragon, which had the Dragon units get a large amount of magic resistance. In this set, Mystic is your magic resistance synergy, and something you want to tech in as a 2 or 4 piece in case you're going against a lot of magic damage threats. So things such as mages and summoners are very strong magic damage wise, and you'll want to be teching in Mystic if you're running into a lot of these compositions. And finally, let's talk about Lux. Lux is the dream girl and dream unit you want on your comp for every super late game comp, because there are comps that you cannot build without Lux. Having Lux, especially her synergy Avatar counts for 2 synergies on 1 unit, and it's essentially the equivalent of having a Fawn synergy on top of a unit, which is incredible. There are some mediocre Luxes, stuff like Glacial, which aren't super good, but there's some very strong Luxes that you should keep in mind regardless of what comp you're playing. Good examples are Cloud and Shadow. Luxes are incredibly powerful because by themselves, with no other synergies attached, the Cloud Lux gives your whole team 20% dodge, which is incredibly powerful in general, especially against AD threats like Rangers or Berserkers. And Shadow buffs your Lux to extreme levels just by having 1, because the Shadow buff is 2 or 4, so Shadow is extremely powerful. Additionally, don't sleep on Electric and Woodland if you have the elements already. Electric goes from like 80 block damage to 200 to 500 on 4 electric, and so 4 electric, especially with Lux, enables some pretty nutty damage return from electric units. Woodland as well, you'd imagine the Woodland to be a very early game focus build, and it is, but the thing about Woodland is because it has the chance of duplicating Woodland units, especially if you only have 2 Woodland units and you need 3 to make the buff, having the potential of doubling your Lux when she's already one of the best units in the game is extremely powerful, and something a lot of people end up sleeping on. Anyways, that's all I have for you on this guide. Please let me know what you'd like to see next. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you guys later.